All right, hello and welcome to the seventh episode of the Rainier Strength Pod. I am Robert, your host. I am here with a very special guest. I'm here with Valerie Oliveira, who has a 1570 multiply total, which consists of a 705-pound squat, a 429-pound bench press, and a 474-pound deadlift. She recently competed in March at the APO with a 1355 total, one of the strongest women on the planet right now. Valerie, how are you doing?
Oh, thanks for that introduction. That was great. I'm great. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I want to go back a little bit. Was strength something that came natural for you? Were you an athlete in high school? Did you play sports and things like that?
Loosely. So I came from a very small town. I graduated with 42 people. So I always played sports, but my family was a very sport heavy family. And I think growing up that was kind of just expected. Not from like my family, but like from myself. So like I say athlete, but like loosely. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
Division 4 school. Um, like we, our last year of softball, we didn't have enough players to play like a season. So we had, I think, three or four very gracious women in my grade who like volunteered to come help us just like finish out our season. So yes, I was an athlete. I played basketball, softball, and then soccer up until my junior year of high school. Um, but it wasn't like I was like thinking I was going to go pro. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It was very much just like the activity that I did in school.
During those sports for the prep, did you train with weights at all?
No, no, which is astounding to me. Like now. And it it's weird because we did train athletes when we first took over the gym that we bought, and the athletes that we did have that were active in their season were super passionate about lifting weights, but were even more so about their sport specific stuff, which I think is natural. But you do still get a lot of resistance from at least the people that we've experienced about lifting weights in season and off season. Again, super small school. We had like a weight room that I don't even know square footage. It must have been I don't even know, like 20 square feet. That seems crazy, but maybe 30 square feet. And it had like I know it had like a lying leg curl, a lat pull down, and like an ab machine. Like there was nothing. I don't even think they had dumbbells in there. But it wasn't something that we talked about. It wasn't something that they encouraged. Um, it was super just not talked about at all. But now, of course, like the position that we're in right now, that to me is wild just to have a better foundation,
Yeah.
as an athlete.
Yeah. So, and you guys have a great opportunity to give back, which is what you do, which is pretty cool because you didn't have a lot of access to equipment growing up, and now you're giving people access to just a plethora, just so much equipment and so much coaching and training. So I think that's really cool that you and your husband both are able to give back in that way.
Yeah, definitely. Corey Ford, our training partner, is actually taking over the athlete program now. He works super well with kids, so he's the one who's manning it. Um, and it's a little slow rolling, but we know we have a good group of kids in there now, and we're hoping to expand it because we do feel very strongly about it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And how did you even get into powerlifting? What was your first introduction to the sport?
Oh my gosh, we were just talking about this the other day, and like my first meet, I have no idea what I even expected. So had been lifting weights for probably a year and a half before I did my first meet, and this is actually my 10 year in August. So my first meet was August 22nd um, of 2015, and I had just I was in college and I had started to go to a community gym that was just outside of campus because I don't know if I don't know if I necessarily thought it was too crowded, or maybe I just didn't have the confidence to really do the weight training there. It was very small though. I went to UNH, and they just recently renovated, as in like the last 10 years, renovated the gym. So I do think there was an issue. I don't really remember. I do think there was an issue with space where people were always waiting. And yeah, I think I was just not confident enough to kind of push my way into that scene.
Yeah.
So I found this smaller community gym, and that's when I started doing more compound lifts. And I was approached by one of the trainers there, and he asked if, if I wanted him to program for me and to do a meet. And I think at the time maybe he was trying to build something. You know what I mean? Like he was very much like the USAPL, that sort of like coach.
Hmm.
And so maybe I think he was trying to build a team, but I don't really know why he approached me. But he programmed for me for my first meet. Um, and like I said, we were talking about it the other day, and like I have no idea what I expected. Like I didn't know flights were a thing. I don't even know if I knew. He probably gave me a rundown of like, okay, you're gonna squat, bench, then deadlift. But I don't think I understood like flights and how you would take your attempts or anything like that. I think I was going in blind. And I went with my best friend who knew nothing about what I was doing. She was just being a very supportive friend. And yeah, that was my first meet. And that's how I got into it. And I mean, I obviously loved it, like despite not knowing a single thing. I think after that um, is when I moved to a different gym, and I met Anthony there, and he started programming for me right after that. Um, so yeah, that was kind of the introduction to powerlifting, and then it was all downhill from there. So.
Awesome. So when you met Anthony, was that also your introduction to the equipment?
Oh yeah, yeah. I had no idea that was even a thing. Like I said, my first meet was a USAPL meet. My second meet was also USAPL. It was like Boston Regionals, and I had already signed up for that before I got programming from him. So we carried on through that, and then very shortly after I got into wraps, I had one meet more that was raw, and I did it in wraps, and then my next meet was multiply. But I had no idea that was even a division. You know what I mean? I had never seen anyone in a bench shirt. I had never seen anyone in a squat suit. Even at that one raw meet that I did with him that was not USAPL, I don't really remember seeing many equipped lifters. It was very, very small in New England at that point. You had like a lot of like Jamie Matta's crew. He was running meets still then, and I'm sure there was people in gear that were in his crew, but I can't think of it. It was like I said, just very much in the minority.
Yeah, and there's a lot of variances in the extremes of powerlifting. And in my opinion, I've been competing. I think we started almost around the same time. At that
Hmm.
time, I was still wrestling professionally, so it was like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But like, there's a lot of variances and extremes in powerlifting. And in my opinion, when you get up in the multiply and the unlimited categories, you really hit that threshold of maxing out the RPMs. It really is just the most extreme, fucking high octane thing that the body can handle. So, what about the gear? Because you've competed in both and single ply. What about the gear entices you versus the raw or even like the single ply?
I don't know. I really enjoy. Honestly, the one that I have enjoyed the least has been single ply. I am not like a tight gear person. I'm a total baby about it. And I think that has been the most challenging thing about single ply, because for it to do what you need it to, it has to be tight. And even then, like what I've worn overkill. Like I don't even like, and it's not spongy, it's very sturdy material, but compared to like a Titan material, it's not even nearly as like severe on the edges. You know how people say that single ply is like sharp, right? Um, so single ply has been my least favorite. But I really enjoy both equipped and raw. Raw to me is just I don't want to say easy, because that like it's just there's less variables to worry about, even down to like having to pee when I put my briefs on, and like having no return for that when I'm squatting. Like with raw, I don't have to worry about any of that. I can just kind of show up to the meet. So I definitely like that. And I enjoyed training like that. I mean, that's my humble beginnings anyway. Um, as far as equipped, I have never really been the person to want to push my body to the breaking point. So I'm not sure it's necessarily that. I do, of course, love like handling big numbers and having that sense of accomplishment after doing a crazy, huge box squat or, anything in competition. Um, but I have always shied away from the idea of getting to the point of no return with that. Very much unlike Anthony. Anthony is like 10 all the way. And I think that's something that I have accepted in like the past probably 4 years. I took a break for about 18 months from competing, and that was in like 2021. And I kind of just had this period of like, what type of lifter am I? What do I want the rest of my career to look like? And I think that was one of the main components, was realizing that I don't want to do that to my body. Is like, and granted, I know that no matter what I do, if I continue competing, I'm going to have the bumps and bruises where, you know, I'm probably going to be pretty decrepit looking when I'm 60 years old if I continue on the way I'm doing, no matter what. Uh, but going to the point of where, it's really pushing, I have always shied away from. And like I said, like I think in the past 4 years, I've kind of accepted that about myself, whereas before I wasn't really accepting it, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's also a thing where, like, when you're old and your body is a little bit impaired, I guess we could say, you earn that, right? Like, I have
Right.
injuries from wrestling. Like, my dad, he's obviously a lot older, but he has injuries from like infantry school and ranger school and all that. And it's like, yeah, it sucks, but like, you earn that. You know what I mean? If you see someone that's elderly and they're just in like perfectly good health, I'm sorry, but they probably lived a pretty safe life. You know what I mean?
Sure, 100%. Exactly. And that's the thing. Like I know I'm gonna have bumps and bruises and, probably have a little bit of a limp or so, or something. And I'm fine with that. I think I'm fine with that. At least I can say that now at the ripe age of 32. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
definitely like a mark of what you did in your youth, right?
Absolutely, 100%. And sometimes that will deter people from getting into the sport. Sometimes people have a lot of like stage fright, things like that. They're just nervous to compete, especially from, I would imagine, more so from the female point of view. And with you, you are top 30 in the world right now, as far as your total goes, because that's what I consider real strong. So I sorted it by total, and you are in the top 30. So you are absolutely, without a doubt, one of the strongest women in the world. So with you accomplishing what you have for a female that is maybe a little bit more timid or scared, that wants to get into the sport but has reservations, what advice would you give that person?
I mean, I go through it right now with my training partner Emma, and she's 24, and her first multiply meet was last year. Um, so she's going through a lot of like the beginning stages, um, that I could see like in my younger years. It's so weird. It's like I don't consider a decade a long time as far as like because of how my mindset is right now, but in my beginning stages of my powerlifting career, I don't want to be you know disrespectful with the way that I talk about age. I know I'm 32,
Yep.
and I know a lot of people would like consider that very young. Yeah, I think people just have to consider it's difficult because to the majority of people, so say Gen Pop, um, we always want to say that like weightlifting is something that is beneficial to your health, right? As definitely as people age, you know, um, they want to make sure that their bone density stays up and that they stay strong just for everyday activities, even just shoveling their driveway or, having the musculature to keep them on balance. Um, However, there is definitely a difference between weightlifting for uh, general health and safety in the way of keeping their body able and pushing it to the max. And I definitely don't ever want to discourage someone from doing that, because I wouldn't have listened to a damn person. If I was getting talked to even by an older lifter, um, I always want to lean on the side of encouragement, with my experience in mind and what I can help shape. Um, but, I first would probably say take stock of what you have and whether it's worth it, if they were asking, right? I wouldn't,
Hmm.
I wouldn't, I wouldn't offer this just to someone who wasn't asking. Um, to recognize that this is a sport that comes with dangers, with, you know, injuries that could definitely shape your life. Um, but I would definitely lean more toward encouraging people, if they feel passionate about it. Like I said, if I was in the same position and I was 22 years old and I was talking to an older lifter and all they had to say to me was like, "I'll be careful," I'd be like, "Man, fuck you." Like you weren't careful, and you accomplished what you did. So who are you to say, whatever. So I do always lean on the side of encouragement of like, if they're passionate about it and they want to pursue, you know, the lifestyle that it takes to lead like that, I would I would be encouraging of that, and helpful in whatever way I could towards them. Because I
Absolutely.
mean, it totally shaped my life. I got into powerlifting just as I was finishing college, and I think that's probably the reason why I dived into it. It's like you're entering a very transitional part of your life, and I think for the better. Like I came from a family where like passions and hobbies weren't really like a thing. We're just very much like go to work, go to school, come home, whatever. Um, and so this whole idea of like having a passion or a hobby that could like really envelop you was something that was really new and exciting to me when I was very young. Um, and so, yeah, I think I would just lean on the side of encouraging that
Yeah.
person, you know?
Definitely. Yeah, and I always like to say that powerlifting is for everyone. In just
Mm.
like any other sport, you're going to have people that are at the bottom, in the middle, and at the top. Just because you see a lot of like John Hack or like Ed Cohen or like these people, Colton Inglebrick, like all these freaks, just because you see all these people, I don't think that should deter anyone from competing. I competed yesterday, and someone came up to me and they were asking me about tips on squats and whatnot. And I was talking to him, and I was like, "Are you competing?" He's like, "No, I'm just here watching. I'm not strong enough to compete yet." What do you mean you're not strong enough to compete, dude?
Yeah.
You're still like, get up there. You are strong enough. Like, you are enough. It doesn't matter, dude. Like, you'll get better, but like, get the experience, get your feet wet, get familiar with the commands, get familiar with people watching you, screaming, like the timing of the flights, all that. Get familiar with that, you know?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And that is such a huge misconception, is that you need to hit some sort of barrier, um, that to compete. We run into that actually quite a bit out here, since we've moved back to New Hampshire. And I'm not sure what it is. I think just because like we post a lot of our lifts on the Anchor Instagram, um, but there does come a point where I think that deters people, because they think they have to be at a certain level to either, join the gym or start competing, just because we've had people come in and say that to us as they've toured the gym. Oh, I'm not at that level. Oh, I'm not, I'm nowhere near to the point where I could compete. And it's like, what do you mean? Like, there's no barrier of entry. You don't, you could come in, squat the bar, bench the bar, deadlift the bar, and you got yourself a total.
100%.
Um, Luckily, I've had success with convincing people that that is a fallacy for sure. I had a client who, I think it was, so not this past May, the May before. Um, it was the year that she turned 60 and she did her first meet. And she is someone who did not do sports growing up. Um, she didn't have any like activity that she was super absorbed in. And it was one of the first things, I don't want to say the first thing, but one of the first things that she really did for herself. And I was just so proud of her, that she just let all of that go. Because that was a major concern. She's like, oh, I don't want to go and just bench the bar. And I think she ended up benching like 110 or something. So she obviously went past that. But even just letting go of the fact of like, okay, well, even if I do that, it's okay, you know? So yeah, I was super proud about that. I'm working on one other one right now. I'm trying to convince her to do it.
Yep.
But yeah, so we definitely experience that a lot out here is, the fallacy of like, oh, I'm not strong enough to compete yet. And whether that is not necessarily knowing how powerlifting works or powerlifting needs work, um, or, just a sense of like self-confidence. I wish that was talked about more, just kind of on like to people who are new, because that's how the sport grows, right? It's like, I don't want people not competing just because they think they're not good enough yet. You know, everyone starts somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And with you guys opening the gym, Anchor Athletics, you were talking about how you come from a family that's kind of like where your job is your job, your hobby is your hobby, and that's just kind of there's that dividing line. Now, what gave you the idea to get into the gym business, to turn your passion into your career against probably a lot of advice from a lot of different people? What gave you the inspiration and the confidence to actually go forward and do it?
I mean, that was totally Anthony, if I'm being totally honest. Like,
Okay.
he had the conversation about buying the gym, and we were looking to move back anyway from Ohio to New Hampshire, just to be closer to family and kind of get back to like our roots. And the opportunity to buy the gym came up, and he was the one having conversations with that. And I was a little hesitant for sure. I have never been the one to like really dive deep into like programming or anything like that. Um, I've always just really loved training, like I love training and I love competing and I love that for myself, but I was never like in this mindset where I'm like, I'm gonna make this my job, you know. Um, but when the conversation came up about, buying the gym, I, you know, me and Anthony had several conversations about it, but him basically saying like, if we make the jump, like we're both gonna have to make the jump to make it successful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so ultimately I agreed to that with a little hesitation just because I didn't know how it was gonna work out, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't know. Something new. Um, and yeah, it's been great. I remember when we first bought it, because I was waiting tables before. I was waitressing. And for like the first 2 months that we bought it, I remember looking at Anthony and being like, I feel like I'm still on vacation, right? Because your whole time is in the gym. Um, and it's hard not to feel that way now. Um, and looking at it like, and of course, like there's always certain things that come up that make things not enjoyable. But at the end of the day, my job is where I love to spend the time the most. It's in the gym. Um, I don't know. I don't really have many negatives to come from it. Um, and I think you brought up like, people kind of being critical of like crossing over those paths of like your passion and your job. I think I really didn't get, maybe I'm lucky, but I didn't get much criticism about that. Like my family has always been very much like whatever you want to do, like kind of
Right.
hands off in like a it's your life way. Um, so I didn't receive really any criticism from them, and maybe I'm just lucky with that. But yeah, it's been good. It's been great. It's been going great.
Absolutely. A
Yeah.
lot of support. So what
Yes.
has been so there's a lot of positives, obviously, especially like being in
Hmm.
the environment and whatnot, the clients you meet, the lives you change, the relationships that you develop. What have been some of the more challenging moments about being like a business owner or in business in that capacity?
Well, when we first took over the gym, so we bought a business that was already standing. So basically we bought the equipment and the clientele that went along with it. And I would say the biggest struggle that we went through was defining our own culture, um, which in some ways is similar to what the gym had before, but very different in a lot of ways. And I think the biggest challenge that we had was, um, yeah, making ourselves defined in a way that wasn't like the old business. Um, and we had a lot of turnover in that way. You know, we probably kept less than half of the original members over the course of like 2 years. You know, we had, so we still have a few of like the original members, but a lot of it has been people coming and going, because of things like that. But that's all right, you know, because anyone new coming in, um, only knew us as us and our gym's culture. So in the end, you know, it was rough for like a year of being like, man, like, you know, we're having a lot of turnover, but then realizing that ultimately that was a good thing. Um, so that's one, was like defining our culture and kind of the process and growing pains that we had to go through to get there. Because both me and Anthony are very, we're both like very black and white with like what is acceptable, what's not, what we stand for, what we don't. And sometimes that rubs people the wrong way, but most of the time people really jive with that and they know what to expect from us. Um, so that was one. And the other one, just on my personal side of it, um, you know, I'm not a very outspoken person. And so I found challenges a lot within the coaching realm alongside Anthony. So we still do this. We have like our coaching hours at the gym and we're both there. And for a while, I was very much not asked for handouts. I was not asked questions about lifting or form or anything. But that was like kind of in the beginning days, and that was like pretty discouraging. Um, but ultimately, I kind of had to like recognize that that's kind of just normal. That people are going to defer to him just because, even if it wasn't like a male centered thing, it was because he's louder, right? You know, or he talks
Yeah.
more decisively. Like he's much more outspoken than me. Um, so I had to accept that. Um, but now we're at the point where we've had so many of the same members. Like we've had our core group that we coach for probably a year and a half. And in that time, I've had, you know, many more opportunities to develop relationships with people, um, and assert myself in in ways that I felt like I didn't get the opportunity to before. Um, because I think something that I found was like in the times that I did try to assert myself with certain things, it would come off as like, you know, because I kind of speak in the same tone as Anthony, but it comes off very differently. So it would either come off as bitchy or whatever when I was just being direct, right? Um, and you know, I had a client say something like probably one of the most favorite things that I've heard about myself, but it was one of the guys was squatting. I don't remember what happened exactly, but one of the other guys in the group was like, Val doesn't like to hear herself talk. If she said it, she means it. And like that describes like the whole thing where it's just like I don't assert myself often, but you know, I do make myself heard when I need to be. But that was a big challenge when we first took over the business, is like finding that balance and what I'm comfortable with and not taking things personally or finding ways to overcome stuff like that, right? Like people not listening to me or kind of um, overlooking me as a coach, that sort of thing. And yeah, just finding my place as a coach in the gym. Um, and I think I've kind of come to a good spot with that. But it definitely took me a few years to get there.
Yeah, which is crazy that someone would not ask you for advice. Like you have a 705-pound multiply squat, and it's like that's a lot of freaking weight, dude. Like she probably knows what she's doing. like, and you,
Yeah.
like, duh, like, ask her for some freaking advice. But did you have to deal with any of that when you were coming up? Any like, um, stigmas against you because like you're a woman in powerlifting? Did you deal with any of that from any of the dudes or?
Honestly, no. Again, I was like very lucky of, I think, how I kind of came up in the sport. I think just where I was, when I first started lifting in multiply, I was part of a gym that, Anthony basically made the multiply grow in that gym. And, I was obviously training alongside him. And gyms from then on, from when we were training in New Hampshire to when we moved out to Ohio, it was all powerlifting specific gyms. So there really wasn't a lot of like outside chatter of like challenging people or anything. And then, of course, I trained at the sweatshop, so it was all female. Um, and then from there, I really, maybe I'm lucky, but I really didn't have to deal with much of any of that, you
Yeah.
know.
And
So
I think honestly
I
that speaks as a testament to the culture. I really do. I think
100%. I think on the surface, you're still going to get Joe Schmo, from Tucson who is on some video of a girl squatting 500 pounds, and either they're going to mansplain, that her form is wrong, or if they can't pick apart anything about her form, they'll just call her a man. Um, which, they go down to insults. But I always think that's
yeah.
like the surface level, right? Like that's like powerlifting in the fitness world, where that Joe Schmo has probably been lifting at some commercial gym, has never competed, and probably benches under two plates, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
whether he feels threatened or he, feels the need to just be an asshole online, I think that's really like the surface of that criticism. But I do think within the sport, uh, there's been a lot of changes. Like I do think women get the props that they deserve, um, for the most part. There is always like, an asshole here and there that has that outlook, but I do think they get weeded out pretty easily.
Yeah. Yeah, and you do also have an all-time world record in the squat with a 6'11 at 220 single ply, which was last year. As a world record holder, what motivates you? Is it beating other people? Is it beating yourself? Is it trying to make history? What is it that motivates you to put up these crazy numbers?
That is a good question, and I think it's something that has evolved over time. I have always been really intrinsically motivated with powerlifting. I just always loved training and the process of getting stronger, and I was never stacking myself up against other people. In some ways, I'm like, maybe that's self-limiting, right? Like, maybe that did affect the way that I competed. But it was never a driver to me, is to like be the top or to beat someone, when it came to WPOs or stuff or other meets that were competitive like that. Um, it was never about competing the other person. I am a competitive person, but at the end of the day, in a meet setting, like goal number one is to make sure that I do better than last time or accomplish my goals. And I'll take that 100% of the time over, you know, placing, which I don't even think I've been in a in a spot to place. So, that's kind of a moot point. But um, as time has gone on and I've been in the position to kind of swing at numbers, and that 611 now is not all time. I mean, it's all time for tested, just so we're clear. But I have been in position a few times where I could swing at things, and that was definitely motivating. Like, and was able to frame certain meets for me, because when I stepped away for the 18 months after um, my last multiply meet in 2020. I think I said before, like I kind of had like a talk with myself of like, what type of lifter am I going to be? What does the rest of my career look like? I'm not willing to push myself to do the bone breaking numbers, right? I'm not willing to do the things that are going to make me do that, right? And that kind of left me in this limbo of like, what does the rest of my career look like? Am I just going to be in this sort of like, not mediocre spot, but like, what am I pushing towards? And once I figured out that I was able to take swings like that, the rest, like the framework of the rest of my career, really came together. So when we're looking at the single ply numbers, which I had never looked at before, I saw that the record at the time was 610, and I put on Anthony's single ply suit. And the first night that I squatted in it, I squatted 585, and I was like, whoa! And it was pretty easy. And I'm like, okay, well maybe that's within striking distance, right?
Absolutely.
So all of a sudden, like the first goal was to get a single ply total, do a meet in single ply. But once that was in striking distance, all of a sudden, like the rest of the meet got framed out, right? Like, okay, I'm going to try to squat this world record. If I don't squat the world record, then I'm going to try to get this pro total, right? And so it's kind of evolved over time of like, swinging at these records. And I did the 242 single ply meet, and the goal at that meet was to also swing at the world record squat. It didn't end up working out that way, um, but it did make it easier to like figure out a plan of like what I was going to do for the meet. Um, so in a way, looking at the records is motivating, um, but that didn't come down the line until my 10th year of competing, right?
Yeah.
Like it was like I don't know. I don't think I was motivated by records at that point, and of course like my name is on a few top 10 lists, and like that's really awesome. And like if that hadn't happened kind of inherently along my career, that would probably be a motivator to me. It's to get on top 10 lists, um, pro totals, that sort of thing. But as it sits right now, the records um, are definitely a motivator in the way that like it's framing out like my next few years of competing, right? Um, so like at that 242 single ply meet, I was going to try swinging for the squat, and I missed. I think I missed my second, so I didn't line myself up well for that. So I just got the total, got in, got out. At this last meet at nationals, so I competed at nationals in June. So I did that in multiply at 242, got my 242 pro total. Um, but I also took a swing at the all-time world record squat tested, which would have been 716, and I missed it. But I wouldn't even be thinking that if I hadn't along the lines or along the way gone for the 611 or swung for the 242. So yeah, it's definitely it is motivating. Um, but I'm also okay with like letting it go.
Yeah.
Right? Like so like the the 242 single ply squat, like if I had had the opportunity to take a swing at it, um I would have loved to try to get that. But since I didn't, like I'm not going to stay up at 242 and continue trying to get that squat. I'm okay with just like letting it go and moving on. And if I get the opportunity to do other things, that's great. Um, but I have goals to accomplish, and I can't let side quests get in the way.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely. What would you say your ultimate goal in the sport is?
So as it sits right now, I have 7 pro totals, and I would say that that is my main goal, is to have a lot of those. So I have them in multiply in 165, 81, 98, 220, and 242, in single ply in 242 and 220. I would like to get others in single ply if I can. I would love to get one raw. Just one would be great.
Hey. All right. Absolutely. Yeah, just
Sorry,
keep
what was
spreading
that?
across everything. Just keep spreading across the whole
Right.
field of the sport.
Yes. Right.
Definitely.
So I would say
Did
that's the main goal.
did your training look any different for when you went down for the single ply record versus the multiply stuff? Did you have to change anything?
Mm, not really. That was kind of a weird training cycle, honestly. I Before I even planned to do that meet, I had committed to do this 9-day adventure in Utah. I went to like 5 national parks out there with my sister and my aunt and a couple other members of my family. And that was like literally smack dab in the middle of my my training cycle. It was like a month out. And so that was like so strange. I've never, like I said, it was planned ahead of time, so I couldn't like back out of it. Um, but that was like a total mind fuck too. Like going into that meet where I was swinging at a world record for the first time and feeling like, am I even taking this seriously? Like, like I'm
Yep.
gallivanting across Utah in the heat, like, hiking, whatever. Um, so that was like a total mind fuck with that. Um, but as far as training, no, we we did a lot of the same stuff. Um, I had a really hard time with my gear. Again, like total baby,
Yep.
total baby about gear. And my suit were so tight, and I kept complaining about it. And, Anthony at the time had he has the world record in single ply, but he also was the only one who competed in single ply. And so he's like, well, that's single ply gear. Like, it's tight, right? And
Yep.
he's kind of looking at me like, like I'm being a baby, which I was. But what was happening was like the gear was so tight, my straps were so tight that every time I squatted, my shoulders were getting put out of position. And it was making it like literally 10 times harder to squat. And so finally we went and uh, Rudy from Overkill, bless him, he went and altered my suit and added, I think, 3/4 of an inch, which made it um, much better to squat in. It was still pretty tight. Um, but that was probably the biggest challenge. But everything else was mostly the same, except for the 9-day gallivanting through Utah. Um, and that, which we had to plan around, was like, when am I
Yeah.
going to take my big squats? How am I going to fit in all these big lifts? Um, Before, so there was some moving around of that wouldn't be typical, but other than that, it was really like the same template that we would always do for multiply.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that because my most recent meet, like a week out, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna buy a motorcycle. Like I've I've wanted one for so long. Like, and I'm just gonna do it. And my coach is just like, "What are you doing? Like, why are you on a motorcycle? You don't know how to ride one." But I feel like it was just I've been training for so hard for months and months. I haven't been doing things I like to do, like hike and things like that, because I've been so focused on the meet. And I needed something else to just kind of like fulfill that need of adrenaline, but also wanting to mitigate some of the stress through some constant training and suppressing some hobbies that I also like. So for you, what are some things that you like to do outside of the sport? I see you guys have dogs. I also have a dog. He is absolutely my life. So I appreciate other fellow dog owners, but what do you like to do outside of training?
But I almost feel weird like saying it right now because I so much don't spend time on it, but I love sewing. Um, I love that as like a creative outlet for myself, but I have not put any time towards it between like managing the business, us going through a move where we're moving locations next month, organizing that, and then like traveling and just time spent in the gym. I get really down on myself about like not committing time to it. Um, but I love it. And it's like very like meditative to me, to just be working with my hands and just committing myself to like hours of doing that. And I really should put more time into it, but I don't. And I really should. Um, but yeah, I love sewing. Like I hate sewing clothes. Oh my God. I hate it. Like I said, like I have the body weight fluctuation. So like it's a
Yeah.
nightmare to put in the effort to sew clothes for myself that might not fit me in 6 months. Um, so I don't love sewing clothes, but I love sewing like bags, like little pouches, and I've tried taking up recently quilting, and I made like this little baby quilt, but quilting is so intense and requires so much time and effort. So I haven't been able to accomplish what I want to with that. But it's all my fault. Like it's all because I am not giving it the time and attention it deserves. But at the same time, we we spend hours of our week in the gym, for our training alone. So it's like, how
Yeah.
much can I expect from myself?
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely wish I had more time to commit to that. But ultimately, that's ruled by me.
Yep. Yep.
Uh,
There's only so much time. The sport takes a lot from you. It definitely does.
yes.
Not only in the way of like physically and mentally, but also just like the sheer time requirement. And as you get into the equip side of it, it's even longer. It
Oh yeah.
requires even more, you know?
Yeah.
So that's definitely definitely understandable. For your training, what does your training look like? How many times a week are you squatting? How heavy? Bench, deadlift?
So yeah, we train 4 days a week. So like today, Sunday, we train um our secondary upper, so speed bench. Um and then Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So Monday is our heavy deadlift day, and then Wednesday is our heavy bench day, and then Friday is our speed squat day. Um which is probably the most intense day that we have. I think. I don't know. Squatting for me, like I'm good at squatting. I don't love squatting. So uh Fridays for me are like, you know, they're fun after it's done. But I love benching, and so that's my favorite day of the week. Um but yeah, so Mondays, we'll either do like a speed deadlift, or doubles off the ground, or some variation, right? Like a rack pull, or um, off blocks, or a deficit. If we're coming off a meet, or if we're doing a deload or something like that, occasionally we'll do like a good morning day on our Mondays. And then, of course, we'll have like our secondary movement and then accessories. Um, Wednesdays, we'll have either 1 rep max or 2 rep max, unless we're deloading for, a big squat that week. And that's any variation, block, off of blocks, reverse bands, against chains, all that. Um, and then Friday is our speed squat day. So that's all percentage based, right? Um, and we usually go against chains. Occasionally we go against bands, but more than likely chains, with whatever flavor of bar we're using. This week it's safety squat bar, which is absolutely kicking my ass, so that's okay. Just have 2 more weeks of it. Just got to get through it. It's fine. Um, and then yeah, our speed bench day that we did today. Either against bands or chains, and then just 9 sets of 3.
Yeah.
So very typical conjugate split
Yep.
with that.
Yep.
Yep.
Dude, it's so funny that you say that about the squat versus the bench because I'm the same way. Like yesterday, I had a couple people ask me about the squat and like, oh, your form is so good and all this kind. And I'm just like, I don't like to do it though. I like to bench press. Like,
You're like, thank God it's out of the way. That's how
yeah,
I
dude.
feel about a meet. Like every time I go into a meet, I'm just like, I will be okay once I get one squat in, then I'm fine. For literally the rest of the meet. That's where all of like my anxiety about the meet lies, is in the squat. And once I have one, I'm like, okay, I could take a breath, and then I could really take a breath once the rest of them are out of the way. And it's so people will look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, oh, you have a world record in squat. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It's just, you know, it's it's
Yep.
not my favorite. It's not my favorite to do.
Yep, and that was exactly my attitude yesterday. It was like after the third squat, it was a pretty big PR for me too, like a 50-pound PR, and I was just like, oh, finally now I can bench press. Like it's just get
Yeah.
that out of the way,
Yeah.
and I can bench. And then I hear people in the back, especially like the taller people with good leverages, that are like, oh, I can't wait for bench to be over so I can deadlift. And I'm like, no, dude, bench is where it's at, dude. I'm telling
I
you.
know,
I'm
it's
trying to
so
tell
personal.
everyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but when you were coming up in the sport, did you have anyone that stuck out for you as like an inspiration or someone that you looked to and you were like, I really like this. This person motivates me.
like I said earlier, like I have always been really like internally motivated. And, I people along the way definitely like I've looked up to, but at this point in my career, like I said, like 10 years, 10 years in, I am really at the point where I look to people who have done it longer. You're
Yeah.
right, like a
Yeah.
20-year or 30-year career, someone who has like kind of stood the test of time. Because like we were talking about earlier, like you don't get out of the sport without bumps and bruises and some sort of adversity along the way. And when you see someone who has been competing for that length of time, you know that they love the sport.
Yep.
You know that they like care about what they're doing. They love it because they have definitely overcome some sort of adversity. Um, so like, Amy Weisberger, like I trained with her at the sweatshop and she had like a 20-year career. Um, Debbie Damiga, I think she was 30 years. No, sorry, that might be opposite. I think Debbie might be 20 and Amy might be 30. But that to me is like crazy, right? Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want that. I want that for
Yep.
myself. Like, I want to, and like, provided that I hopefully have the health to get to that point, I see myself in that role of being, competitive or maybe not competitive, just competing to the point where it's like I can extend it to when I want. I
Yeah.
don't want to get to the point where I take myself out of the game too early, because I want to be in this for as long as I can.
Yeah.
Um, so at this point in my career, someone like that is very inspiring to me.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, as when I was younger and growing, like I was just experiencing the sport. Like I
Yeah.
don't know if that makes sense, but like I was just
Yep.
like so excited to train and like meet new people. And I've never been like a historian of the sport or anything like that. And yeah, it was just fun to me, and I was just very much internally motivated of like, this is the thing that I do, this is the thing that I it's part of my identity. um and that was really motivating to me,
Yeah.
not necessarily like you know external motivation.
Right. Absolutely. And it's funny how like you had mentioned, your motivations over the years will change. Like for me, when I was in
Hmm.
my 20s, it was a lot of like just piss and vinegar, red line, doesn't matter, deal with it later if you're hurt, all that kind of stuff. And then I'm also 32, so as I'm getting older, I'm like, wait, Donnie Thompson totaled 3K at 49 years old? Like, what is this? And then you start reading about like
Crazy.
Chuck Vogopol, the stuff he did in his 40s, and you start to kind of be like, okay, how long can I do this for? And at what level?
Right.
You
Right.
know, and did I hear that right? That you also said you guys are relocating the gym?
Yeah. Yeah, so we just signed a new lease for August, but we have an overlap between the two, so we have a nice like month where we can kind of prep the space and then move it over. But yeah, we're in like a business park with a bunch of other businesses, which is very exciting just for visibility. Right now, we're kind of like tucked back on a side street that gets no traffic. So as far as like just visibility, like it's pretty low. And yeah, our lease was up in September there, and it just that it hasn't been like a super great situation over there. So we're very happy to be like in a much more stable spot, that's very similar to where what we have right now as far as space. So very
Nice.
exciting. Yeah.
Definitely on the move up here. That's freaking awesome.
Hmm.
So you are you prepping for the WPO right now? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. Which I haven't done a WPO since 2020, so that's very exciting. Yeah, I did nationals, and I was the only equipped woman there. So I didn't necessarily go for the WPO bid. I went because I had never done nationals before, and I was trying to accomplish that 242 pro total in multiply. Um, in the meantime, I got the WPO invite, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm happy to be back on that stage. Um, and yeah, yeah. So it's me, Anthony, and then our training partner Josh. We're all going to be prepping for that soon here.
Nice.
Yeah. Hmm.
And what can we expect to see from you at the WPO? Biggest total ever?
Oh my gosh, that would be awesome. I don't know if it's in the cards. Hopefully, though, I'm like trying to do some stuff to like fix my deadlift, which
Yep.
I've been, like talking shit about myself for like years. But I think I figured some things out and hopefully it pays off. That would be very cool. I don't know if it would be in the cards to do biggest total ever, but I definitely want to try to swing at that 716 squat again. If I get it, great. If not, then, is what it is.
Yeah.
I would love to break 700 again. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. At nationals, I just barely missed a 400-pound bench, which my best was 429. So that was very cool to like get back into handling those weights again. But I pressed it, and right as the head judge was saying rack, like I just lost it. It was like if you look over at the video, like in my hand, actually don't even know if the video is posted. Maybe I'll send it to you. But like the bar is over the J hook of the bench. So it's like I clearly had no control over it.
Yep.
So I really want to seal the deal on that too. And maybe a big deadlift, that would be great. Um, but yeah. I biggest total ever, I don't know. That'd be sick, but I don't know. Maybe if the stars align perfectly. But
Hell yeah,
we'll see.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I heard a
Hmm.
quote too. I can't remember who it's from. I think I heard it on the Tales from the Warm Up Room podcast, where they said when it comes to equip lifting, it's squat as much as you can, bench as much as you can, and deadlift what you have to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's definitely the case for me, for sure.
Dude, that's how
Sure.
I feel 9 times out of 10, dude.
Yeah, my deadlift has never been my strong suit. I had like one day that my biggest deadlift ever, the 474, where I felt like I could pull anything, and I don't know what I was on that day, like whatever. When things just like line where you're like, I can put it in my hands. Um, but generally it looks like, you know, it looks terrible.
Yeah.
So, uh, hopefully I have one of those days again, and maybe I could pull something bigger than 400, which has been kind of like where I'm around no matter what I bench
Yeah.
or squat. So yeah. Hopefully I'll be able to pull something together. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I will say it here for you since you won't say it yourself. WPO biggest total from Valerie Oliveira will be coming in 2025. I'm just going to put it out there right now. And when it happens, you can thank me for putting it out there.
Yeah, definitely. I will give you your props and thank you for the confidence. I appreciate it.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
needed all I can get for sure.
So, winding down here, why don't you plug some of your social media where people can find you, follow your journey?
Yeah, sure. So my Instagram is val_r_Oliveira. And then the anchor page is Anchor Athletics NH. Um, That's it. I have a sewing page, but I haven't posted on that since like 2019, and I won't post on it again. But if you want to follow it and see other stuff that I've done, that's cool too. But yeah, just those
That's
two.
sick, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Val, thank you for talking to me. I really appreciate your time, and it has been a blast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.